Hello everyone and welcome to Hold Space. Today we are celebrating the LGBTQA+ community in the sport of soccer, and I am so excited to have the opportunity to moderate this incredible panel and get to hear the amazing stories from the perspective of an ally in the community. I believe it is so important to have these conversations. Before we get into today's discussions, I would like to say that we recognize the LGBTQA+ community is vast and incredibly diverse. The experiences mentioned by our panelists today are not all encompassing and do not reflect the experiences of everyone within this community. This discussion is part of a larger conversation that has been ongoing during Pride Month surrounding diversity in sport. Now, to get right into it, my name is Papadakis, Toronto FC's digital host and in-stadium host, and joining me today are Quinn. Quinn is a professional soccer player with the Canadian national team and currently plays for the OL Reign in the NWSL. Also today we have Aaron Silver. Aaron is the children's author of Proud to Play, a children's book about the LGBTQA+ athletes in Canada. And last but definitely not least, we have Alex Mason. Alex is the current Director of Equity and Ombudsperson at Downtown Soccer Toronto. Welcome, everyone. How are you all doing?
Pretty good.
Thanks.
Happy to be here.
Good, thank you.
I'm really happy to have you guys today, and we're going to get right into the question. Quinn, you were born and raised in Toronto, but have played professionally all over the world, which is absolutely incredible. You also have a unique perspective being a non-binary player in pro soccer. What has been the biggest gift and the biggest hurdle you faced in the sport due to your identity?
I think there have been really difficult points in identifying as a non-binary trans person in, professional sports. I think sports are sometimes hyper-gendered to the point where they really don't need to be. And I think, my presence on the team has helped my teammates kind of break down those concepts and their understandings on what role gender has to play on our teams. And so I think that that's probably been the most difficult thing. I show up to the locker room and language such as like, come on, ladies, or whatnot is kind of the typical common lingo used on our team. And so I think it's a difficult reminder being in those spaces and kind of questioning what my role is on the team. But I think, over time, that kind of language has dissipated a lot and those spaces have become more inclusive. And I think sports, although at times they can be really hypergendered, that doesn't need to be the case. And I think in the future, we're going to see less of that. And so I think that's been my most difficult hurdle, but it's been a really unique challenge. And I think that it's going to create kind of a precedent for every team to be on. And I think that'll make it more inclusive for folks, that are coming out in the league. We just had another athlete who came out in the NWSL as trans non-binary. And so I see these changes happening. And I think that's really exciting, even though they've been really difficult hurdles for me as well.
They might have been difficult hurdles for yourself, but definitely a rewarding one, being able to have these conversations and seeing those changes. So what advice or ideas can you give to someone in order for them to start those conversations in their own locker rooms for younger athletes coming up into the professional world?
Yeah, I think, a lot of important conversations happen just between teammates. And I see this on my national team. They're becoming advocates in their own spaces, even though they don't have, trans or non-binary athletes on their specific professional teams. I think that it's recognizing that language even without the presence of, a trans or non-binary person in order to make those spaces more inclusive for folks who haven't come out or new players on the team. And so I think that's definitely the first step, is between athletes themselves. And then as well, just as organizations, I think the educational piece is such a massive point because, a lot of folks haven't been taught about the LGBTQ community and the best practices in order to be the most inclusive. And so I think when you have education that's coming from the top down in terms of organizations and professional teams, that really sets precedent.
Aaron, you wrote a children's book called Proud to Play about LGBTQA+ athletes in Canada. Your background is in journalism and you're an outspoken ally, so writing this book was a perfect fit. Why do you think it is important to talk about diversity in sport with children from such a young age?
I have kids of my own and they play sports, and I want them to grow up in a world where everyone feels safe and included, and where we celebrate diversity and inclusion, and we're compassionate and we're accepting, and, where one day books like this aren't even needed. And I think that conversation starts at the youngest possible age. So this is a book for kids, and through the experiences of athletes across over time in different sports. So we look at judge sports, team sports, male sports, female sports. We look at it across a wide scope, and I hope kids will, come to understand that, if you can play, you can play, and that being part of a team is about being inclusive and accepting. And, we judge people based on who they are as a person and how they play and what kind of teammate they are, not on their gender or their sexual orientation or any difference for that matter. That it's important that we all support each other and celebrate diversity and inclusion. And these conversations start at a young age. We have to normalize, we have to highlight these visible role models who've come out to lead by example. So I hope books like these, not just mine, there's lots, I hope it encourages people to start the discussion at a young age and learn what's acceptable and what's not acceptable, and how you want to be treated as a human being, especially if you're in a team environment.
Learning about your book, was there a specific moment in your writing career where you had a moment where you were like, I want to write this book, and why?
Honestly, this book wasn't my idea. It was something that the publisher asked if I'd be interested in writing, and I was nervous at first because I know how important it is. And all of these athletes, it took such courage and bravery to come out and to be themselves. And I know that people who don't feel safe and comfortable, how difficult it is on their mental health and on their performance. And I knew a lot of responsibility was on my shoulders. So I just, I worked really hard to get it right. I read every article, biography, autobiography. I worked with athletes, academics, EGAL, You Can Play, even the Canadian Olympic Committee, to make sure that I would really get it right, and that this book would accurately reflect the experiences, the varied experiences of these athletes, and that we could have a resource, that people could turn to. And I'm actually happy that recently someone in the NFL came out, Carl Nassib, and this book is already out of date. The book talks about how there's not a single out athlete in any of the big four sports that are currently playing. And yesterday, all of that changed, and I honestly couldn't be happier. And when Carl did come out, he talked about how one day there won't be a need for athletes to come out. And, my hope too is that there won't be a need for books like this, that it will just be a non-issue, and that we'll all be accepted for who we are, and we'll be celebrated for our diversity, and it won't matter, or how we identify or who we love.
Now, Alex, Downtown Soccer Toronto is Toronto's first LGBTQA+ recreational soccer league. How has having this safe space in soccer enhanced your lives, your peers' lives, and those who enroll and play in the league themselves?
Well, I love sports. I'm also a track sprinter and a black belt in Taekwondo, but with DST specifically, it had changed my life in ways that are so meaningful. First, it's a community of go-getters and change makers. Everyone supports each other. It's a community of acceptance of any and everyone across the spectrum. Second, it's given me the opportunity to give back in ways that have really made me feel so good inside, because I get a chance to share my story, to uplift people's lives, to go through different conversations and have discussions about diversity and inclusion. It's given me a platform to really speak up and speak out on matters that are important to myself, as well as the league members. And of course, lastly, I knew so many years ago, almost 20 years ago now, that by joining DST would be a win-win. There would be no bullying, no mocking, no jeering, no guilt of feeling, different from everybody else, and most importantly, feeling accepted to be a part of something special.
Thank you, Alex. Now, this question goes out to all of you. What steps would you like to see the soccer community take in order to grow among the LGBTQA plus community in the next 5 years, both on the professional side and on the recreational side? Quinn, we'll go with you first.
Yeah, even recently, I've gotten a lot of inquiries from club teams on how they can help with their trans inclusion in their specific clubs. And I think that it's a point that isn't been talked about much within Canada and Canada Soccer. And so although there are actually really inclusive policies within Canada Soccer for allowing folks, to play in the gender that they identify with, I think, a lot of club teams in Canada just don't know what these regulations are, and they have some struggles with it. And so I think better access to those resources would be incredible, and just making sure that every club team knows that Canada is a really inclusive place for soccer and for folks that are just starting, even at the recreational level. And so I think that's really important, and that's been a hurdle that a lot of club teams have been reaching out to me about, and I would love to see change in the next little while that I think is a pretty feasible change.
Alex, what about yourself?
I think for me professionally, I'd like to see more meaningful allyship, more support to LGBT community causes, and not just putting up a flag every June. We all can do that. We need to see tangible outcomes. By doing so, I think it'll spark a different narrative. So yeah, I just would love to see that professional mesh with more recreational. There should be some sort of allyship there to really nurture and give back in ways that can really sustain the recreational leagues. Recreationally, I want to see more partnering, more sponsorship opportunities, and really more meaningful engagement.
Thank you. And Erin, what about yourself?
I think education and visibility, we've come a long way, but, while researching my book, it's clear there's more work that can be done. So, as much progress as we've made in the last several years, there's more we can do. And education and visibility and highlighting these role models and talking about issues and teaching kids from the youngest possible age, I think that's the key to continuing to move forward.
Thank you. And I want to thank all of you for joining me here today. Quinn, Erin, Alex, it was so amazing to hear your stories. And I hope many of these conversations continue to happen. Thank you so much for your time today.
My pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks again.
And thank you for joining us virtually for Hold Space. On behalf of myself and Toronto FC, we wish you all a very happy Pride Month. See you all soon.